I imagine that to go to Morocco, you needed to partner up with some local players.
We've established very quickly relationships with, I would say, most of the founders. Even the ones we haven't co-invested with have been extremely welcoming. It's been amazing. I get asked this a lot, like, when do you think the ecosystem here is picking up and why are you so excited? One of the things that I see here, that I saw back in Egypt, when you see founders with significant opportunity cost, not working in consulting or banking or multinational or what have you, or a family business, and going to entrepreneurship, that's a very strong sign.
So what's missing in the ecosystem for it to take off?
There is a certain amount of momentum that is building up. At the end of the day, the big thing that's always missing in every ecosystem, including here, is exits, right? We're in it now, honestly.
Yeah.
This is the inflection point. The amount of enthusiasm, the amount of excitement. I have to say also government policy is quite impressive here. You put all these things together, and if you come back here now, there's tremendous opportunity.
Don't tell me this too loud because I might...
I'll tell it to you again after we finish the podcast.
Hi, Tarek.
Hello, Mahdi.
I'm super happy to have you. You're in Casablanca.
I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you flew all the way from Cairo, so I'm super excited to be with you, Tarek, because you're one of Egypt's leading VCs.
Thank you.
And what's super interesting about you and Algebra, and you'll tell me a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Algebra in those next 50 minutes, is that you started out as a Egypt venture capital player. And less than 2 years ago, I think, you've started to invest in Morocco. You've invested in YoLa Fresh. For those of you who listen to the podcast, you've heard probably Youssef from YoLa, which is like a farmers to retailer logistics fintech platform. And also Deepecho, which recently had the FDA clearance to market in the US. So quite interesting bets. So in this episode, Tarek, and I'll let you introduce you right now, you'll tell us how from being a Egypt player, you've made a foray into Morocco. What are you looking for here? What's so special about Moroccan founders? And we'll have a bit of fun.
Fantastic. Thanks. Looking forward.
You like
to
the program?
Yeah, I love it. I've listened to several of the episodes and the podcast. I really like it. So I'm very happy, very honored to be here. Thank you for having me, Mahdi.
Pleasure. So for those of you who don't know you, what can we learn from you? Who are you, Tarek?
Geek by training. So I studied engineering in Egypt. And then by random chance, I found myself working as a software developer in the San Francisco Bay Area in like I'm very, very young. So this is like the mid 90s,
so
right around right around the time of right after the Netscape IPO. So right around the time of the...
For those of you who don't know, Netscape is the Mark Andreessen.
Exactly. The .com 1.0 time before Google.
Okay.
So I did, I worked as a software engineer, developed software in Silicon Valley for a few years. And then I found myself more on the technical side than I wanted. I saw that, a lot of the interesting decisions were happening on the commercial side. So I went to Stanford for business school, got an MBA, and then switched to a more commercial career. And then realized I didn't want to stay in the States for much longer because I probably would have been much harder to come back to Egypt. So I made a, controversial decision back then and came back to Egypt for a while, I did a turnaround of a services business and started in venture in 2009.
Okay, it was quite early. How was Egypt in 2009?
There was very little, if anything. And there was one fund. I had the opportunity to work there. It was a government-sponsored, so not a sovereign fund, but a government-sponsored fund. It was a great learning experience for me. We did Fawry from that one, so it became very successful.
For those of you who don't know Fawry, it's like the first Egyptian unicorn. I think the first VC-backed IPO.
First VC-backed IPO in Egypt, first company to reach unicorn. It got to a $2 billion valuation, then it went down after that. It became a pretty good success story.
And you were the first investor.
We were, together with others, the first ticket into that. So it was, a great learning experience. We also invested in a few other successful companies, but it was within a structure, government sort of sponsored and so forth. So we branched out and started Algebra in 2014 closed the first fund. In 2016, we had pretty strong investors: IFC, EBRD, Cisco, Egyptian American Enterprise Fund, and private capital. We invested so we did 22 investments from Fund 1, including the second unicorn in Egypt, MNT Highland, and a bunch of other successful ones. We started early, so we got some. We're very proud to be associated with many of these great founders. Then we closed our second fund in 2022 with the same, mostly the same investors from Fund 1, together with both DFIs and private investors.
DFIs, for those who don't know it.
The development finance institutions, so organizations like IFC, EBRD, FMO, GTGF, BII.
And those are really supporting investment funds in Africa with an African mandate through direct investment.
We would not exist if it had not been for DFI. Yeah. They really championed us. In Fund 1, there was nothing like. We had Fawry and we had a couple of other success stories, but there was really no industry in Egypt.
Okay.
So they supported us in Fund 1, Fund 2. They've been great partners, and of course, we have also private, so family offices, bank, and so on.
And so, why does an Egyptian player look at other markets?
So we've always wanted to have exposure beyond Egypt, both from an opportunity perspective and from a diversification perspective. So we always wanted to find additional areas of opportunity. We've been in Egypt for almost 10 years now with Algebra. We've taken a lot of punches in the face. We've learned a lot of lessons. So we think these lessons.
Which ones?
Oh my God, I can write a small book.
No. You give me some matter.
But I think there's merit to taking these lessons and the ones that are transferable at least, and applying them in other markets. And we also see opportunity in other markets. So with Fund 1, we always thought that our focus would be a MENA focus, and we did that. And we made 3 investments outside of Egypt, mostly on the Middle East side. For Fund 2, our focus is more North and Sub-Saharan Africa, because we believe the parallels make a lot more sense. If you build a business in Egypt, and you sell a solution in Cairo, it will probably work. It will not necessarily work very well in Dubai, but it will probably work in Casa or in Lagos, just because structurally the markets are different.
How different?
For consumer plays, for example, the spending power is different, the behaviors are different, the type of consumer is also different. So it doesn't always, the parallel isn't always as obvious.
I really like the discussions that I have with Almada, with 212 founders. I think the local players here are doing an amazing job. Now we're seeing more regional players bringing their experience and expertise and background of 50 plus investments. So I think Morocco is picking up. It's a momentum. There's a lot of things to do in Morocco.
And we've seen that empirically happen. We've seen our best entrepreneurs, when they think of expansion, think of North and Sub-Saharan African markets.
More than they think of Middle East right now?
It depends on the type of company. Okay. I think there was a big push to go to the Middle East. We're now seeing many of our companies come, especially to Morocco, and one of the reasons why we're here. But also we're seeing a lot of interest from investors. Investors will want to come to Egypt, and their portfolio companies want to come to Egypt, and vice versa. So we see a lot of this like corridor type of relationship happening between Egypt and many of these other markets. So that's been a driver for us.
Okay, so maybe let's try to understand like how can you go from a national player to expand in another country? I imagine that to go to Morocco, you needed to partner up with some local players. I know that you're, for example, very close to 212 founders by CDG Invest, the team with Naufel and Amin. So like, for example, like how does an expansion work?
One of the things that have been a very positive surprise for me in Morocco. So, we started out, and when we fundraising is always very painful for a VC fund. So we did that. We were back. We once we closed the second fund, we said, we need to show that we're back in Egypt. So we spent like about a year or so very focused on Egypt, making deals in Egypt and so on. And in the past 3 years, we made 14 investments from Fund 2, including 2 in Morocco. So we wanted to show that we're back, we're investing and so on. And then we're like, okay, now it's time to look outside of Egypt. What are we going to do? And literally, like, we just, went around and visited the markets that we thought were interesting, looking for partners, because we understand well, because we've seen this happen in Egypt, that, you don't show up to a market that you don't know and start making investments on your own. You need strong local partners. Morocco has been extremely welcoming. We've established very quickly relationships with, I would say, most of the founders. Even the ones we haven't co-invested with have been extremely welcoming, with advice, with connections, with showing us what they're working on very openly, very transparently. So it's been amazing. We've moved faster than I thought we would in Morocco. As you mentioned, we made 2 investments, YoLa Fresh and Deepecho. We're very happy with both investments. We're taking 2 more investments to investment committee this month in July. I met 3 more companies while I'm here. We have a pipeline in Morocco. We're super gung ho on Morocco.
Why?
It's a mix of things. I think on the one hand, we see opportunity. A lot of people say that Egypt is a little bit ahead of Morocco. I think Egypt is ahead in certain areas, and Morocco is ahead in other areas. But let's say that we have some lessons learned from Egypt that we think applies to Morocco, and we think we can create value that way. And we see that both founders and co-investors appreciate that, are encouraging us to come here. So we think we can do something good here.
So I'm going to go deep into the question, because I'm asking you a question, but I want to know the full answer. So what lessons that you've learned from Egypt can you transpose to Morocco? Like, if we go deep into the topic.
It's very contextual. So for every
company,
there, let's put it this way: there are business model lessons. The business model lessons are very, very specific to the business. So many companies are trying to do, logistics plays, and we've had several investments in logistics or fintech, or So
if we take the example of YoLa, for example.
I think the team at YoLa is phenomenal. To be honest, I think it's very much optimization of performance, and because of their very strong operating background, the things we've seen at YoLa are much more advanced than anything we've seen in Egypt by far. So when I say Egypt is ahead in certain areas, but in agri, YoLa is ahead of anything in Egypt, I would say. Just the level of performance and operations and so on is very impressive.
Because of the founders.
Because of the quality of the founders. And that's something else that's very impressive here in Morocco is, one of the things that I get asked this a lot, like, when do you think the ecosystem here is picking up and why are you so excited? One of the things that I see here that I saw back in Egypt, I started very early in Egypt, so I saw all the, the ups and downs and everything. But when you see founders with significant opportunity cost, not going after not working in consulting or banking or multinational or what have you, or a family business, and going to entrepreneurship, that's a very strong sign. And I think that, both Larbi and Yusuf are, they have very significant opportunity cost, and they're doing something very exciting. That
I think they're in their 40s, they have child. For them, it would be more of a stable plan to go work for Karem and go work for Samsung, as Youssef has done it. But that's for sure. At the end of the day.
But the reason they don't do it is because they see a bigger opportunity in a startup. And I think that applies to founders who decide to join a startup, but also applies to, founder -1 type of level and goes and further down in the organization. And when you start seeing the depth of talent in startups strengthened that way, that's a very, very positive sign. I remember one conversation I had in Egypt back in the day where someone said, "What will I tell my father-in-law?" I work for a big multinational. I'm going to tell him, "Hey, I'm leaving to work for a small local company that has 10 founders. He'll ask me if I was fired." And then things switched. Then it became, "Oh, why aren't you at a startup? Why aren't you still in a traditional business? Like, you're losing out on this like high growth, high potential wave that's coming in." And people became very excited. And now the father-in-law is like, "Oh, why don't you do what your friends are doing?"
The mentality has changed.
So the mentality, of course, like, it takes time, and it hasn't changed completely. But once that kicks in, that's one of the very strong indications and things are going well.
But you can say the same in Egypt. Like, a lot of founders have some big opportunity cost not to join a start, like to stay in consulting or to stay in any normal company, I would say, and not a startup. But what's so different about Egypt and in Morocco in that sense?
So, in Morocco, it's a combination of things. I think we see many things that have not been done yet. We see very strong founders that are well equipped for that. A growing ecosystem of investors, both local and regional, global, who want to come into the market. A lot of structural similarities between the things we learned in Egypt and some of the problems that founders are trying to solve today. And just at the end of the day, we're people. We like being here. Personally, and like many other people in the team, we just feel it's very welcoming. It's a great place to be. There's a lot of potential for an Egypt-based fund as well. We like the economic stability, so currency stability and so on. That's not the main reason, but it is an important consideration. So any one of these things, maybe on its own, it's just one thing, but you put them together and then you have a pretty compelling proposition.
Okay. And the thing right now, like from what I understood from your investments in Morocco, is that so you've done 2 investments, but always as a follower investor, not as a lead investor. So you said Almada was leading the round, and you partner up with them, etc. Are you planning on leading rounds? Sorry.
It's not an objective. So we didn't come here saying in 2 years we need to have led the first.
No, because it's so different leading a round than being a follower. I mean. It's different, and it's different in some ways and not different in others. I think it also is contextual. So if we come into a deal where there's a company, for example, that's doing something that we know very well because we have a portfolio company or more in Egypt that's done it well, we can analyze the numbers, we can compare. We have a partner, not necessarily a company, a lead, but we have a local partner that helps us validate the local opportunity and so on. Then we can lead the deal. But I think, honestly, we've worked very collaboratively with the co-investors before. So we didn't feel like it was never an afterthought. It was, let's work together. Let's, what are the issues? We exchange notes. And that's part of why, I felt the other investors here have been extremely welcoming. They're open. They share their models. They share their memos. So we mentioned Almada, but are there so who in the Moroccan ecosystem do you work with? Because I think that's super important, as you say, to partner up with local players. They will open doors.
The 2 investments that we made have been led by Almada. So Almada has been a great partner for us. But as I don't want to miss anyone, so I don't want to mention anyone. But I think we've exchanged ideas and deals with pretty much everyone.
Okay.
It's still the ecosystem here is still, there's, I would call it around a dozen or so players. So it wasn't very difficult to get to know them for an incoming investor. And I think having some credibility by making 2 investments and wanting to do more and coming here and meeting the founders, etc., and having some interesting lessons learned from our portfolio in Egypt, people are very welcoming. At the institutional level, as an organization, and as individuals.
Okay, and I also mentioned. I also saw one thing is that, for example, right now the ecosystem is really in an early stage ecosystem. So you have the local and the regional seed and the Series A players, but we're missing the Series B plus investor. I'm not sure there's already a strong pipeline of growth startups, but still right now in Morocco, if a company is doing very well, it will not find a growth investor. So what do you think about this investment gap in the region?
It's exactly what happened in Egypt. It's a bit of a chicken or egg thing. If you're a fund manager, you need to raise capital. If you go to your LPs and say, hey, I'm going to work in country A, you have to show an interesting enough pipeline for it to make sense. What will happen is you get regional funds who have the ability and who are sort of diversifying the risk among different countries. And then once the companies like DeepEcho and YoLa and many others in the market get to that point, you'll start seeing capital come in from funds that are not dedicated to Morocco, but have the ability to make deals, or you'll find club deals. That's something that we did also in Egypt, where we had the exact same funding gap. Sometimes you'll find that some PE players will go down a bit and get to the later stage tech deals. So if there aren't very many companies seeking, the $20 million round, entrepreneurs here are very resourceful. They'll find ways, and existing investors, they'll find ways to to work it out. Until there's enough of a pipeline, then you find more dedicated capital.
Okay.
I think capital is flowing. There's a lot more capital that will flow with the Mohammed Sadis initiative and just organically by phenomenal people, like the DeepEcho guys and the YoLa guys and many others. Of course, I'll mention the ones in our portfolio first. But there is phenomenal talent here. And with that, once the numbers happen, capital will come. That's what happened in Egypt, what happened in many other markets.
You're welcome, but because there's not enough competition yet? Because actually, if you think about it, if there is so strong opportunities, why do only regional VCs come to invest in Morocco? Like I was at GITEX and I've seen maybe one European fund that was interested about Morocco. So is there still a blank space, a white space, a blue ocean in Morocco for anyone to come and lead the best rounds and follow on the best round? Because there's not so much international investor outside maybe of Africa that are actively looking at Morocco.
I mean, it takes some build-up, and you need, and for someone who has a regional mandate or even a global mandate, they're going to compare markets. So if they look at a market that exits have already happened, a lot of capital has come in, etc., it's less controversial for them. So the allocation will tend to go more towards things that have some more proven successes, which is not to say markets that are still in their earlier stages will not get capital, but it will take some time until things get proven out. It's, I think, what happened in every emerging market. Then, of course, you have the global tides. Like, in 2021, 2022, all the international investors sort of went home. The tourist capital disappeared, and
tourist capital.
If people went home to take care of their
private equity funds that were doing crossover deals, the Tiger, the Coaches that were investing massively anywhere, imagining VC that VC is PE, but
yeah, I mean, we saw all kinds of things back in Egypt. But I think honestly, VC is a local game. You need to be committed to local markets. You need to understand them well. You need to have the right partnerships and so on. At least that's what has worked well for us in Egypt and what we're trying to do in Morocco. But from a ecosystem evolution perspective, we're extremely, extremely bullish on Morocco.
And what's missing? Because you're bullish, but what's missing in the ecosystem for it to take off?
There is a certain amount of momentum that is building up. At the end of the day, the big thing that's always missing in every ecosystem, including here, is exits, right? But before exits, what you see subsequent rounds of subsequent capital. I think that hasn't happened here a lot. This is what gave Egypt big momentum, is that, the local funds, let's say we're doing the $5 million, $10 million tickets. Back in the day, when we raised our first fund, we were okay together with some others, to invest $2-3 million maybe for a $50 million fund in a $5 million ticket. When the 20 million round was hard, right? Because there weren't enough funds to be able to put money, and then the 50 and so on. Then you go to a different. It was actually easier probably to raise like 50 or 100 million, because there were pools of capital for that ticket size, for that level of maturity, than to raise the 20 million. So there was a gap in the middle. I think that's also happening here to a certain extent. But once the momentum picks up on the $2 to $5 million round, let's say, you'll find more push to get to the 20, and then
we're still in the building blocks of the early stage ecosystem right now, when we're still actively building those success stories that make an ecosystem.
There are phenomenal people building phenomenal stories here. So yeah.
So what is the next 3-4 years for Algebra in Morocco? So you said you're actively looking at 2 companies, but considering that a fund is, I would say, an average of 20 tickets, not 20 tickets, but 20 investments. Are you planning on doing more than these 2?
We'd like to do more. We'd like to do more. We're open to doing more. We don't have to. I think for us, the quality of the founders, the quality of the opportunities that we're looking at are what's driving us. We're learning also about the market. We're not as experienced in Morocco by any stretch of the imagination as we are in Egypt. We're finding pockets of opportunity that are very interesting. One thing that many people talk about is the market size. the market size for certain segments is very interesting in Morocco on a standalone basis. For a long time in Egypt, we had that question: can you build a big enough company in Egypt?
Just in Egypt.
Just in Egypt to make, and Fawry answered that question. When it became a $2 billion company, it had no operation outside. So that question was answered in Egypt. That doesn't mean that many companies are trying to expand beyond Egypt, but you can build a standalone business in Egypt and make it worthwhile for the investors.
Yeah, actually, also it's not the same numbers. I don't know how many inhabitants there are in Egypt, but it's a huge
110 million.
110. Yeah. Morocco, it's I think around 40.
Exactly. But for example, if you look at the auto market, there are 4 million cars in Morocco and 6 million in Egypt. So it doesn't always compare directly to the population or even to the GDP. It's very contextual. And I think once you get a flavor for these differences, then you can also think about where are the opportunities that make sense and so on. So part of it is us learning and establishing more of a presence here. But we see an inflection point, much like what we saw in Egypt a few years back. There's a lot of positive momentum building up.
When did it start, actually?
We're in it now, honestly.
Yeah.
This is the inflection point. The amount of enthusiasm, the amount of excitement. I have to say also government policy is quite impressive here. So you put all these things together and you see it. I come here every 2-3 months maybe.
You wish you could come more.
I wish I could come more. Yeah. And I like to stay for longer because I really like more. I'll stay for a couple of weeks maybe or so if I can.
Don't tell your wife.
Yeah. No, it's a great place to be here. Honestly, it's a very incredibly hospitable. Anyway, but there's a lot of positive momentum building up. Every time we meet new entrepreneurs. There's a very significant interest in diaspora. Like Moroccans who have been in Europe or have been in the States, have worked in world-class companies, have been sort of trained and are able to perform, are very interested in the Moroccan market. Again, people with very high opportunity cost are leaving these opportunities and looking at something new and interesting.
Yeah, so we're also in a momentum in the sense that because of macro topics, a lot of Moroccans, and I'm part of that, are actively considering coming back to Morocco because there is everything to do from an entrepreneurial perspective, and the climate is better.
Yeah.
There's more sunlight. No, but also family. But I think that also you, as a fund, there's this positive tailwind so that Moroccan people from the diaspora are coming back because it's potential investment opportunities for you, I guess.
For sure, and again, that's one other thing we saw a lot. We saw a lot in Egypt, and I remember one conversation I had in Egypt with a founder who was coming back from the States, and he said, I'm coming to Egypt, which is a market that I know. There's a lot less competition here. I can raise capital. I can take a business model that's been de-risked because it worked in many other markets. It worked in the States, but also worked in India and in Brazil, and so on. And I'll run with it for 2 years. And if I make it great, I'll make money. I'll have a great success. If I don't, I can come back to the States. The States is not going to go away. So this is a similar time to, in my view, in Morocco, where things are starting to pick up. Competition is still, very reasonable. If you come back here now, there's tremendous opportunity.
Don't tell me this too loud because I might.
I'll tell it to you again after we finish the podcast.
But you talked about the auto space, but if you look at the Moroccan markets, have you identified some plays that haven't been covered yet by some entrepreneurs? Are you actively looking to invest in some project that you haven't seen here yet?
There are for sure. A lot of it is in fintech, but we're looking out for some things. But at the end of the day, especially in a market like Morocco, you want the very strong founder with very high opportunity cost who saw this opportunity, is committed to it, and then you want to back something like that. I mean, we're not looking to seed anything. here, because we really believe in the passion of the founders, and if anything, startup ride is always a roller coaster ride. So you want someone who's motivated enough to want to go through that.
But so we haven't mentioned, but when you invest in a company, what stage of the company are you expecting for you to be at? Because at a seed round, you can have an exceptional founder, but you can also have like a seed stage company, like you can have an exceptional founders, pre-product, pre-revenue, but you can also have some founders that have already demonstrated traction, some revenue, and you can start to invest at that inflection point. Where do you position yourself? Can you invest at a pre-revenue, pre-product company?
So we're a multi-stage fund. In Egypt, we invest pre-PowerPoint sometimes. So we all the way up to, and like later than A, we probably wouldn't come in at B. These terms can be a little confusing.
Yeah.
But let's say from a ticket size perspective in Egypt, we start at a few $100,000 first check and go up to 5 million. In Morocco, because we still don't know the market as much, we still are multi-stage. Our ticket size is probably around the 1 million or so, maybe 1 to 2 million, depending on how things go. So we could invest in an very early stage business if we know it, because we have some experience with it, etc. Otherwise, we'd probably be looking at something that has some traction. It doesn't have to be a lot of traction, but just something.
Because the YoLa and the Deepecho are what, like pre-Series A, Series A?
So we invested pretty early stage in Deepecho.
What stage?
Like first institution, technology development.
Yeah.
Certainly before FDA, like significantly before FDA. YoLa had some traction, but not a lot of traction. So seed, I would say.
Okay. Yeah. So you make the bets.
Yeah, we do make the bets. We're not shy about making the bets. We've learned that you have to make a bet to get a return. So we make the bet.
I was having a discussion with an investor here in Morocco that was telling me that because the pipeline of deals was not that I would say potentially explosive, they're not actively looking for the 10x. They're more looking for companies that are doing 2 to 3x in terms of potential. So when they invest, I think they might think that the company will be returner, but at the end of the day, their real objective is a 2 to 3x. Do you think you can find companies like that right now with the potential that we have in Morocco?
We don't think like that.
Okay.
We certainly look for returns. The companies we invest in, you never know, right? So every investment we've ever made had potential to become explosively successful. Otherwise, we wouldn't do it.
But
what ends up happening is a different story. The types of bets that we make in general in this part of the world are different from, let's say, the Silicon Valley bets. We're not taking the same amount of risk. There's less, with some exceptions, but for the most part, these are business models that have been done somewhere else. You are more taking of an execution risk rather than very high level of innovation, etc. I mean, core tech might be an exception to that, but generally that's the type. So you don't expect to get the 100x, but you do expect to see interesting returns. And I think the companies we've invested in are certainly, our ambition for sure for them is not 2x.
But it's different play than what is being done in the US, that's for sure. Because also at a seed stage, if we just look at, for example, the AI deals that are being done with tremendous valuation for a seed stage company, plus the amount of capital that is flowing into the company and the amount of capital that is put into the subsequent rounds, I'm not sure we're playing the same VC bets, I would say, here in this
I don't think we've ever played the same VC bets. When I made the Fawry investment, I went back to the Bay Area and talked to my friends about it. They're like, why don't people use their credit cards?
Yeah.
It's a completely, things have evolved significantly since then, and everything has become more global, etc. But it's always been a completely different ecosystem with completely different dynamics and so on. So It is different and has always been different.
Maybe a few questions to finish this podcast. If you've had a 28, 30-year-old entrepreneur in front of you looking to build something in Morocco, either for the Moroccan market because it's TAM, the addressable market is huge, or expanding, what advice would you give him?
If you're a founder in Morocco, you're doing something very interesting, you might find someone who's very strong in Europe or the States who's willing to help just because they want to give back. Or access to other people who've done something similar before that you can also have a conversation with. So having this type of pull that a Silicon Valley founder would not really have because it's a very different type of play can be very powerful, very beneficial, and doesn't cost you a lot. Just the will to sort of do it. The other thing I've seen happen a lot in Egypt, and I see it in Morocco sometimes, is share the wealth. Like look for co-founders. It's a roller coaster ride. You want strong people by your side.
Don't do it alone.
Do it alone if it makes sense, but don't be very dilution focused. Initially, bring the right people on board. There's a lot of excitement building up. If you're a founder in Morocco that is starting to ride that wave, ride it well because it can serve you well. Okay. So that's on the people side. On the strategy side, I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned is the power of saying no. So in many instances, you're a founder, you're started something that's very interesting, and then things come out of the woodwork. You meet a large client and they want you to go in a certain direction to serve them very well, and they can sort of take you down the rabbit hole. Someone says, come expand to this other market when you don't really
have this
product market fit is not very solid yet in your core market, and you rush to do something else. Much like founders and other team members who have opportunity cost, when as a founder you say no to these things, it's because you're saying yes to something that makes more sense. It's up to you to determine what it is, but because we operate in markets where so much has not been done, as opposed to more developed Western markets, saying no has served many companies very well. And it's not always intuitive because, as a founder, you want to go out and hustle and capture opportunities and so forth.
That also raises the question of clear thinking, of mental clarity. You need to be so clear-minded that you need to learn how to think, how to make decision-making processes that are efficient, because you can be in your bubble and you can... but you need to be a clear thinker, I think.
And surround yourself with good people. I think, it's when you have good advice, aligned incentives with capable people.
Advisors, business angels, who?
Investors, advisors, co-founders. And look at there's a lot of other lessons learned from what other companies have done that can be very valuable across the globe. And then on the last part is on the fundraising side. I meet many founders who think of an investor relationship as a transactional relationship. It's really not. Once someone is on your cap table, they're on your cap table for a long time. So think of an investor as a long-term relationship.
Wedding.
Yeah, of sorts. It's a long-term relationship. It's, how can they help you beyond just the first check? Will they be there for you when times get tough? Can they help you with the things that are important to you, whether they are operational issues, strategic issues, fundraising, subsequent capital? These are the types of things that you want a good investor to help you with. And there has to be good chemistry. At the end of the day, this is a people business. It's going to be tough for sure. I think I've been involved with maybe 50 investments or so. I haven't seen a business plan that I saw on day one materialize. Sometimes they do much better, sometimes much worse, but things always change. Companies pivot all the time.
But you need to present one the first day.
Yeah. And in doing that, you need co-investors, advisors, founders, co-founders, etc. in your camp to help you. It's not... It makes a world of difference.
Amazing. Very good advice. Maybe one last question before we end the podcast. So who's the next person that I should invite on the show? A founder, a VC, Moroccan, not Moroccan.
You know, we have two investments. You've had YoLa Fresh. I think the DeepEcho guys have a great story.
Youssef?
I mean, up to you to decide who you want to invest, but yeah, I mean, either Yusuf or Yusuf and Saad.
Yeah. Actually, we have our New York event this week, and one of the co-founder will be there.
Yeah, probably Saad.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Saad will be there.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it greatly.
I don't know if you want
much.
to add anything else as a final note, but...
No, it's been great. Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here. Always great to be in Morocco.
Moroccan founders, if you're, actively looking to raise funds with players, you can talk with Algebra, you can talk with Moroccan players. I think the guys here are doing an amazing job. Thank you so much for listening to the show.
Thank you
like
for
and subscribe, and see you for the next episode. Merci Tarek.
Merci, je vous en prie.
Merci. Hey, tu parles français.
Je parle un peu de français.
Merci. Top.